So this is our debt strategy and payoff dashboard. Currently on revision 5.1. This dashboard has been through a ton of changes and improvements based on customer feedback and questions. I've been meaning to make a video. I've made a couple. They've been deleted off our YouTube just simply because of by the time I make the video, get it uploaded, somebody asks a question, I make changes, and then I have to kind of redo it. So, but I think it's finally in a really good spot. So I'm making a new video, and this will stay on our YouTube for foreseeable future. So this will be kind of a longer tutorial and overview of the product. I'm going to try to go in good detail of how it works, how to use it step by step. So I do want to cover one thing really before we get started, and that's in terms of the password for the file. So as far as using it day to day, you should never have to unlock the file. Everything you need to interact with and actually use it is either going to be white or beige, and those cells are not locked. Everything else is, and it's for a purpose, is to protect the file, protect the formulas, because some of it is pretty complex. So I understand some people do want to unlock the file. They want to change colors or maybe change some formatting, and that's fine. And this passcode will work, but it does not work for the first two tabs. So the About tab, the Password tab, it's a separate password that I don't share. It's just set up. These are proprietary tabs for our brand and for the business. So you can use this passcode to unlock everything else. And then I also have
just a really short and fast
I do include a video, which I'm going to pause that. I do include a video now that kind of walks you through a little more, it's 2 minutes. So it's really quick, but it does walk you through using the passcode to unlock a file. Okay, so now we'll kind of go ahead and get started. So you're going to start here with the debt trackers. I will note that what I'm about to cover is covered in really good detail in the PDF guide that you'll get if you purchase a product. So all of our products come with a PDF guide. Some are more detailed than others depending on the complexity of the file, but this dashboard really has a really detailed and pretty long, lengthy PDF. So I highly recommend you use it. It'll probably cover a few things that I forget to cover today during the video because I'm kind of winging it and just going through. So as you're updating this, you're going to kind of, again, the white and beige boxes are everything you're going to input. Everything else is locked, protected. And I'll do the best I can to work top down and kind of work through this one thing at a time. So the first thing you're going to fill out is the debt name, the loan name. It could be loan, credit card. This system does work for credit cards. I've gotten some questions, and there's a ton of notes built in around that, which when we get to that, I'll try to remember to explain. So this example, this is set up to house, and as you see, when that name's plugged in for debt name house, it also populates to the top right. So as you're going through, every debt is going to be it's set up that way to where once you populate the name, it's in the top right. It just makes it's a quick, easy visual. So as you're flipping through and you're updating your payment tracking, it's a quick, easy visual to know which one you're in. So the next thing is going to be the original loan amount. This is so when you originally took on the loan, how much did you take it on for? This isn't your current balance. This is, you want that loan history, because what happens is that original loan amount, your loan APR, and your term are going to populate this amortization table. You're going to update your payment history, and then as you start working in your debt strategy, if you're making extra payments or you want to play with some lump sums, which I'll cover too, all this gets recalculated. So you're going to want that history in here. It's pretty important for this overall setup to work. Loan interest rate, this is just your annual APR. Loan term, 360 months is what this one's set to. First payment month is the very first payment month of the loan, not of the debt strategy, but of the loan itself. So again, if you took out this loan, it would have, in this case, it would have been November 2023. So if I look at my payment tracking down here, November 2023 is the very first month. And a quick note on the payment tracking, you're going to see the yellow down here. This is automatic. So it's currently April 2025. So that's why this is highlighted in yellow. It's another quick visual to say, look, everything should be filled out up until at least this month from a history standpoint. And as you're updating your payment tracking using this, this is a flag to make sure you're in the right month when you're adding information. Current principal balance. Okay, so you have original loan amount, now you have the principal balance. So a snowball strategy will focus on principal balance, and avalanche strategy will focus on the loan interest rate. So you're going to want to update the principal balance based on what do you currently owe, what's remaining on the loan or the credit card, etc. And that's how your snowball strategy, if you choose that, is going to select which ones to do first. So in this case, interest rate's 5%. If I go to, I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but so the dashboard itself, this is where your strategy and all that's set up. It's currently set to avalanche. So if I'm looking at highest interest rate, 5% may or may not be it, depending on everything you have. But up here, you got to see it. You see the path is laid out. So house is the third, and it's just based on APR. So obviously the credit card is probably the highest. And then you've got current market value. So the difference between these two, the reason both these are important, or the current market value is important, is it's going to play into your kind of equity / net worth. So there is a net worth calculation built into the dashboard. You got net worth tracking. So as you're paying off debt and you're closing the gap between, I'll go back, current market value and then your principal balance, that net worth is going to change, possibly from negative to positive as you go. But it's just one more feature, one more tool that's kind of built in. Now I am going to go up here to the top. I'm going to backstep just a little bit. So debt setup, US dollar. This is the currency setup for the entire workbook. It's in blue because it's automatic in the debt tabs and it's set from the dashboard. So debt strategy setup in my dashboard, you can see choose your currency, US dollar, and there's 4 different options in here. Back to this, so debt link data. So this is all automatic and it's based on having this debt be part of the strategy. So if you look over here to the right, you see a link to debt dashboard and it says yes. So that means you want this debt, so the house, to be part of your overall debt strategy to pay things off. So if you did not, there's other features with this as well. Hold on a second. So if you didn't want this debt to be part of your debt strategy, or it's new, or you're just toggling some things, this feature gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's all you have to do is turn this to no, and you're going to watch this link data is going to change. A lot of things are going to change. So my principal versus interest, all that's going to change. So if I go to no, I'm going to change that. So my debt link data dropped out. You'll notice my total interest paid went up significantly. And that's simply based on the loan amount, the APR, etc. So I'm not paying any extra on this loan. I'm just paying it like I'm supposed to pay it based on the original loan terms. And now my total interest is $186,000. So if I flip that back to yes, you'll notice that drops down to 81 because I've rolled it as part of an avalanche strategy. It's third, and by the time I get to it, so you'll see this 2024, that's the payment amount that I'm paying on the loan in total. And the difference, so that 2024 in comparison to the current payment amount, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit, I'm trying not to confuse you too much, but this value down here, the reason it's blue is it's directly related to the loan term and all your information. So let me turn this back to no. This won't change, but it will at some point. But current payment amount, this is as of today, right now, based on your strategy and everything else set up, what are you supposed to be paying on this loan? And that's the $1,073. And this is purely based off your loan information. Now, when I change this and I link it to a strategy, it says current payment amount, so it's still the same, but it will change once you get to a month. So right now we're in April 2025. But when I get to December of 2026, that payment is going to jump to the 2024. So this value will update to reflect what part of the strategy you're in and how much you should be paying. Okay, so now we're going to go back to, so as far as the extra payment input, this is another kind of, it's just a tool. It doesn't do anything if you have this set up and linked to a strategy. If I plug in 500, it does nothing. It won't do anything, it ignores it. I'll change that back to a 0. So I'm going to flip this back to a no. Okay, so now I'm at 186. So just pretend I've added a debt to my system. It's a new, I bought a car, or whatever the case may be, a student loan, maybe you don't want part of your strategy. But you say, look, what does this look like, or how much will it impact this debt by itself if I just paid extra on it? Now I will note the extra payment input assumes you're going to pay that extra through the duration of the loan. So that is a caveat to how this works. But again, it's just a little tool to play with. So if I plug in $100, that dropped to 149. So, you know, a mortgage is a really long loan term, 360 months, 30 years. So of course it's going to knock off a ton of interest by doing that. So I'll change that back to a 0. We'll set this back to yes. Okay, so now we're going to go through the debt results, and then we'll get down in here to using the payment tracking. So all this setup, linked to the strategy. Here's your, we'll do a little bit before and after. So we'll do no. So I'll unlink it first and just show you. So loan term 360, approximate total payments is 360. Those generally those should match. If you're not linked, you got no strategy, those should match. Calculated payment amount, the 1,073, the same number as down here. Your total remaining is what was the total amount you were going to pay. So that's principal and interest minus any actual payments you've made. So you'll notice that payment tracking, there's a chart up here, total remaining and actual payments already made. So total principal balance and total interest, and that chart's reflected up here. Original total required, that was 386,512. So you'll notice the total remaining 385, you paid 1,000, total required, you know, was the 386. And then you've got new total required, which is 386,500. It's pretty much the same. So this new total required, and then you've got, I'll come back. So last payment month, October 53, and new last payment month, October 53. So the new total required and new last payment month, those two values will change if you roll this into a strategy or even play with the extra payment input. So watch these do, so the 386 and then October 53. We're going to change this to yes. So now I'm at 281,907 in November 2036. So huge changes in total required, so about $80,000 or so, and then years, right? 18, 17 years looks like off the mortgage by rolling it into a debt strategy. Okay, we'll leave that to yes. And then the equity is what I talked about earlier. It's the difference between your current principal balance and your current market value. So as you update these values as you go, it'll play into your total equity. So now we'll get into the payment tracking. This is pretty cut and dry, but there's some features with this that I want to explain as I go through. So you're just going to update payment tracking as you go through and pay on the loan. So every month, if you're opening up this dashboard, you're just, hey, I plugged in, I paid this much. It could be more, it could be less. It's whatever you actually paid. I'm not worried about it I wouldn't worry about it down to the penny. You can, it's going to be relatively accurate either way. If you want to pay it, put it into the penny, you want to round up a dollar, whatever, just plug in a value and this is going to update and reflect that. For a mortgage, it might be, the more accurate, the better, of course, because you got much longer loan term. And it plays a big deal early on in the mortgage. So one thing I'll note is this entire amortization table, all the loans, all the interest, all this stuff being calculated is based on, so as an example, I'm very early at my payment stages in this case. I don't have much payment history out of the 360 months. So the table is making the assumption that for all these calculations that I'm going to pay this amount, the calculated payment amount. But when I come in here and actually plug in a value, so as an example, so if I plug in, okay, I paid $2,000 this month. So when I hit enter it's going to replace that 1,073 with this actual. And so it's going to record actual, and that's going to play it into the entire amortization table. And what that means is you're going to, so let's do this. I'm going to keep this simple without too many variables being in the table at one time. So you'll see no, so we're not linked up. You're going to see maturity months 360 to 359, 358. So I'm basically paying the 1,073, 64, and then my maturity month is changing by 1 month at a time. Right? That's how that's going to work. Plus loan balance period, all this information is being calculated. Now, if I pay extra this early in the mortgage, it's going to make a huge change to the new total required, the total interest paid, etc. So if I hit 2,000, so you'll notice I went from 360 to 359 to 354. So I just shortcutted myself by like 4 payments by just paying $1,000 extra. And you'll notice now my new total is 383 because I'm saving, you know, a few $1,000s or so in interest, and then my payoff time changed just by that one extra payment. So one feature that you can use this table for is even within it, even with the strategy on, I'll do that too. So yes, so let's say you're going to come into a lump sum and you're figuring out, okay, where in my strategy should I plug this money? Now generally, the short answer is, you know, if you're on a snowball and you get a lump sum, well, you could come in, technically you should just use it to pay off the credit card first and then put it on the personal loan to speed up the overall snowball. But you can still play with the math to see what it's going to do. So you could come way down here and say, look, January 2027, I'm going to have an extra 10,000. I'm coming across 10 grand. So you could plug in 10 grand and you'll see what it does to your overall strategy. So now it changed it to May 36. I'll take that back out and show you what it was before. So it was November. Okay. So it went from November 36 to May. So I paid extra, and by paying extra, I'd speed up my payoff time by 5 months, or however many months that was. So that's a neat little feature. Let's do that again. I'll go back down. So I don't know if that's the same month or not, but let's say 10,000. Let's watch total interest. So now I went to 76. So I saved $5,000 in interest by paying $10,000. Now really, again, it's really early in the mortgage. So if I were to do that much later in the mortgage, it would make a big difference. It'd be less impactful. So put that 0 back in. And that's essentially how this table works. Let's talk a little bit about, before I jump off and go to the strategy, let's talk a little bit about credit cards in here. So a credit card, I realize it creates, I get some questions on, hey, this doesn't work for a credit card, but yes, it does. You just have to, it's literally the same, but there's just some things you got to understand. So treat a credit card, if the day you stop using it, you can treat it like a loan amount, right? You're not adding any more dollars to it. You're going to pay it off. And you're going to pay on it every month, and you're going to pay it off. And there's some calculations that determine how long that's going to take. So you have, I'll use that as, I will actually go to the credit card example. So credit card, I currently have for debt 3, original loan amount, 17,000. So let's just say original loan amount is, okay, the day I decided I'm no longer going to use it, this is my current balance is the 17,000. Now your loan interest rate is whatever the APR on the card is. The tricky part for some people is the loan term. Hey, I don't have a loan term, but technically you do. You just have to figure out what it is. You have to work backwards a little bit. So I'm going to disconnect this from the strategy so we can just do the fundamental math around this card. So based on a $17,000 loan and a 15% interest rate, the current payment amount is $473. So what you're going to want to do is, and that's based on a 48-month term. So if this current amount is too high, so go look at your credit card statement and say, okay, what are they saying? What's my minimum payment required? And maybe that's $300 for this. So you're going to just change this number, so 72, and just needs to be generally close. Doesn't have to be perfect. But 72 months, maybe it's 84. Just play with the months. until you get that dollar amount close to what your minimum payment required is for the loan. And then that's what you're gonna base this entire table and other information off of. So that the 328, say you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty close to what my credit card companies tell me I have to pay each month. Then okay, they're basing it basically around somewhere around 84 months. So technically, if I didn't spend any more money and I made the $328 payment every month, I'm going to pay it off in 84 months. And you can change it to be different. You can change it to whatever you want. You can say, okay, look, I want a 48, I want a 48 month, and it's going to change this minimum payment. It's just, you're trying to snowball. I'll say it this way, you're trying to look at what your minimum payment required is. That way you can base your snowball or avalanche payment off of that. So if it's technically the credit card company's only asking for 300 and you're saying I'm just going to base it on 48, you're technically already adding some to that. So just something to be kind of weary of. And it really doesn't, it does kind of matter, but at the end you're going to win either way. So it's going to work out for you either way. Now, one other thing on credit cards, and that's it for setting up the overall debt table for a credit card, is to exclude a 0% interest rate. So with a 0% interest rate, you have to do, it still works, but you have to do kind of an additional step. So you have that introductory rate. You want to use that introductory rate as information. So if you're using an avalanche strategy, it's based on interest rate. So if you're in a 0% rate and you want that to your advantage, as far as, okay, look, I want my avalanche strategy to ignore that while I'm in that rate and pay on something else that's going to save me more money, then you can do that. That's all you're going to have to do is, in this case, I would change. So for one, I can't plug a 0 in here. If I plug a 0 in, it's going to, so math doesn't work with zeros, if you remember anything in, high school or even college. So math breaks down pretty quick. You can't calculate it in a 0% interest rate, it doesn't work. But what you can do is you can just simply lie to the system. So a 0% does work, but you just gotta make it really, really small. So if I plug in a bunch of zeros and just put a tiny 1, see everything works, everything falls out. You'll see my total interest is basically 0 up here, and the math shakes out and it does everything it's supposed to. Now what you'll be able to do is, for the duration of your introductory period, set up this debt, you'll pay on it, and then once you get to, okay, when your introductory rate is done, you'll update your current principal balance, and maybe by that time, let's say it's now 13,000. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new debt, which I'll walk you through. I can technically do that now. That'll be the easiest thing. So what I'll do is right click, move or copy, and since I'll make a comment here. Normally to make a new debt, you're going to use the debt template that's empty. It doesn't really have much information in it, but it really doesn't matter. It's going to work either way. So let me walk through this. So when this one is done, so right now let's assume it was linked and it's part of your debt strategy. And you'll notice it moved it to last. And the reason it moved it to last is it's currently set up on an avalanche strategy. And I'll go back to debt 3, and it's a credit card with 0%. So in terms of a strategy, it's going to be the last one to get focused on. Now, for the terms of using this one, so when this is done, your introductory rate is over and you've paid on it. What I'm going to do is change this to no. So I'm going to unlink this. I'm going to right click, move or copy, create a copy. And I'll just move right down here past debt 5. And then you'll see it says debt 3. So I'm going to rename it to debt 6. So the next sequential number, no spaces. And now you'll notice so what I would do then is change this original loan amount to 13,000. And this might be back to now my introductory rate's over and I'm at 16% interest. And now I'm going to link it to my strategy. So now it's going to update my strategy. Okay, look, now that your introductory rate's over, now it's saying, okay, look, now you need to focus on the credit card. So you leverage the 0% while you could, but now you need to focus on the credit card because that's your highest rate. So it'll move things for you. And in this case, you have all the history, right? You have your credit card, the original one, original loan amount, your payment history. You don't have to delete it. You don't have to get rid of the tab. You just pulled it from the strategy. It's not impacting anything, but you get to keep the history. And then you got debt 6. So that's really it for credit cards. I will note one other thing in terms of this strategy. So I'm actually gonna look at a perfect example. So loan interest rate's 5%. This one's 3. So if I plug in a 5-year, the same exact number. So now remember, I'm on an avalanche strategy and I'm trying to look at interest. So it's trying to look at, okay, what's my highest interest? I'm going to focus on that first. So we have 2 interest rates exactly the same. It's going to throw the system off. It doesn't like that. It basically creates an error, but it's going to flag it for you. So if you see gaps like this, or if you go to your data table, so this is a summary of all your debt tabs pulled into a table. You see it flagged. You got 2 interest rates that are identical, and it's like, okay, I don't know what to do with that. So if you look at debt order, it's 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. Okay, that doesn't work. It's got to be sequential. So it's really easy solution. You can choose which one you want to pay first, but I'm going to go back to debt 2, and if I just simply make this a 5.01, so a tiny little change that really doesn't matter, I just fixed it. So that's all I had to do. Is I'm telling it which order I want to play with just by adding a little bit of interest. And you'll notice that from a 5%, so 23.15 in total interest versus if I do 5.01, 23.20. So $5. So it's a very small, tiny little change that just allows the workbook to function like it's supposed to, and it doesn't have any real financial consequence. I'm going to change that back to like a 3. I think that's what it was set at. Okay, so now we're going to go to the actual dashboard, and we'll talk through, because at this point you've basically just gotten your debts set up and you've gotten your debt history in. So that's the key point you want to get to before you jump to the dashboard and start playing with any type of strategy. So on the debt strategy, you can choose between Snowball, Avalanche, or user defined, and we'll walk through. I'll change it to Snowball as an example. So right now, if I look at total interest, actually, before I do that, let's talk about the payoff order. I do want to explain something. It's real simple, but you may come across this depending on your strategy choice. So credit card, personal loan, you're going to see these dollar amounts incrementally get bigger as you're compounding that payment from one to the next. But you're going to notice student loan says paid off. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it simply means that through your strategy, student loan would have been number 4. But because of the duration that it took to get through these, so this is June of 2037, that your student loan would have been paid off through normal payments before your strategy got to it. So it's telling you 4th and 5th, but yet your house is going to be the last thing you paid on. These are just going to be paid off. They'll be paid off already through your normal payments. Now, if I were to change this from an avalanche to a snowball, see how that changed? So I'm no longer going to have anything, paid off through normal payments. Everything's going to be basically tackled through the strategy. And you'll notice that snowball is lowest principal balance. So the personal loan is now first and my house is last, and that makes sense. You'll also notice that, let's do that again. So this is kind of cool. I'm glad it actually worked out because I see it all the time in forums. I see it significantly. They're like, avalanche is always better. Avalanche is always better. Okay, well, no, it's not. So look at this. So an avalanche strategy, I had 5 debts. My total interest paid is $102,000. When I went to Snowball, $96,000. And I can explain this really simply. So avalanche will back at 102. So Snowball compounds faster. So your dollar amount gets bigger faster. And what happens is, so like let's look at a perfect example. So I'm at 1920. So if I go to Snowball, oops, by the time I get to my house, I'm at 2785. So what happens is in this case is I've only extended, before I got to the house another year or two, whatever the case was before I started this. But because that's such a big number and it's on a mortgage, I'm paying less in interest. That big number makes a bigger impact. So the only way Avalanche does work better is if this starting extra payment amount, I'm going to show you this actually. So if I did a 0, this is going to make this worse. So Avalanche is 127 and Snowball 114. That number got bigger. The gap got bigger. So let's go back to Avalanche. Now let's do this. So 500. So if I change my extra payment amount, so that's the extra payment amount I'm going to make over the minimum payment on my very first debt in the strategy, which in this case is the credit card. So let's do this. Let's go back. Oops, I'll make that 0. So you see my 368. Let's do a quick check. So debt 3, is this the one? No, it's not linked. Debt 6 is linked. So I'm at 16%, 368.42, right? So that's the current payment amount. And if I go to, and it's linked to the strategy, if I go back to the dashboard, that's the 368. So if I say, hey, look, now I'm going to pay 500 extra, this should change to an 868. See, it did, 868. So now Avalanche is 86,880, and Snowball in this case, 84. See that number got closer? So if you have several debts, in order for Avalanche to be better and work better, you need a larger extra payment amount that you're paying over minimum payments every month. The bigger this number gets, the more effective Avalanche is. However, the flip side is if you don't have a lot to pay extra, Snowball is going to be your best strategy because your payment amounts are going to compound faster for you. So that's a tidbit. Again, I see it in forums all the time. People, Avalanche is better. Avalanche is mathematically better. No, it's not. It actually is not always the case. Sometimes it is. It depends on how many debts or what you're trying to work with. If you only got 2 or 3, Avalanche is probably going to be better financially. But if you're working with several, that Snowball compound, that faster compound could be significant. Okay, so for strategy setup, for start month, you're going to look at, so in this case, this is the first month you want to start your strategy. You want this to be this month or a couple months out, but when do you plan on rolling this money in? You don't want it to be a date behind current date, because then you're going to be behind your strategy, and just some of the math might be, it'll still work, but you're just, the math will compensate for itself, but generally you just want to plug in a date that's forward from today when you're first getting started. And then current gross annual income. So this only helps calculate, so a couple things, well actually not a couple things, it is 2 things, but really one is debt to income, but you got 2 sides debt to income. It's your debt to income front end and debt to income back end. So if you don't know the difference between the 2, debt to income front end is just mortgage / real estate. So in this case, how this is calculated is if I go to my data table, and you're going to want to do this, by the way, you're going to want to come into this table, and for the debt, for the only one, you don't need to check all of them. So this is the debt type, and you can tag the type of debt it is. You don't need to do every one. It's not important. But you do want to tag whichever one, if you do have a mortgage or a house, you want to tag which one that is. So then on your debt to income front end, it does that calculation for you. And then back end is just everything. And then really that's it. That's all this is to it. I will say your results are, so your reduction in payment count, this is the total payments reduced, so 388, so total payment months. Or no, total payments. Sorry, total payments. Total savings in this case is the 122. Current debt balance 374, and that's going to be, if you look up here at payment tracking, actual payments complete and remaining balance. So the 374 is your current debt balance. And then last debt payment is April 2034. And if I look up here at my debt payoff order, that's going to match that date there as April 2034. And again, this is a really great tool. You can play with different strategies. I will say I didn't talk about user defined. So user defined means So if I plug it to user defined, when I set it to user defined, initially it's going to be no strategy. So if you look at debt payoff and order amount, there's nothing showing. And that's because in order to use this, and I've got some built-in notes in here that'll walk you through, in order to use the user defined, you have to set the order yourself, which is easy to do. You just do it in the debt table. And I just pick my order manually. So I can come in and say, okay, I want to do the truck first, personal loan second. See how they're populating up here? Student loan will be third, credit card four, etc. And it'll just do it in that order, and then that'll be your order strategy. If I leave it blank, and I'll take these back out. If I leave it blank, then it'll just be no strategy at all. And that's a quick way to tell between, total interest paid in this case across all debts was $206,000. And if you look at, let's just do I'll do a quick check here. So you got 186 here. So that's 186, that's 1,500. You got nothing on that one. 3,600 here, debt 5, 10,000, 4,000. And I'd say quick math check, that looks like it's adding up like it's supposed to, because the difference between the 206 and the mortgage 186 was about 20,000. So that makes sense for the rest. So that's total interest paid across all of the debts that's in your strategy. And then you've got the 293 is the principal amount, and if you turn on the strategy, so I can, again, I can play between the two, that number changes significantly. Principal amount shouldn't change, it didn't change, but your interest paid is going to be significantly different depending on how I go through this system. Now it does say credit card 2 is paid off in 2027. Oh, okay, I see what happened. I'm not paying any extra. So this is going to take too long. I see what happened. Okay, that's right. So because I took that extra payment amount and made it a 0, it's going to take me longer to pay off that personal loan. So then this is paid off by the time I got to it. So by simply changing that to a 250, see all that changed. So then I'm starting with more, so I'm going to pay this off faster, and then I'm going to get to this quicker. So, okay, that worked like it's supposed to. So again, the guide will have a ton of details, and I may have missed a few things, but this should be a pretty good overview of how this functions and works. If you got any questions, shoot us a message. Hope you enjoy the product, and thanks for watching.